This is actually the first episode of 2021, episode 40 of Utah in the Weeds. My name is Chris Holifield.
I'm Tim Pickett.
And we have a very special guest today. The first episode of the year, we figured let's bring a patient on. Valerie Blaylock. Is that how you pronounce your name, Valerie?
It is.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and being willing to kind of share a little bit of your story or a little bit of your cannabis usage and your history there. Was there anywhere like special you wanted to start with this one, Tim, or do you want to kind of just go way back here with Valerie, or how do you want to do this one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the exciting thing about Valerie is she has a lot of personal experience. She has a good relationship with the plant. Is that true, Valerie?
Yeah, I would say that that's very true.
Yeah, so I think this episode we just see where it takes us, Chris. We'll see where 2021 takes us. Now,
Valerie, when you say a relationship with the plant, what do you mean by a relationship? Is this like as far as, growing it, as far as like just using it for years and years and years, or let's talk about that relationship there.
My relationship with cannabis has actually, I think, evolved. At first, I started using it to kind of cope with my chronic pain and with my, I have constant sleep issues. And at one point I was on opiates, tramadol, which they told me wasn't an opiate, but is, and a bunch of other medications. And I think at one point I was on 20 medications or something ridiculous. I was initially diagnosed with MS. So a lot of complicated medical conditions that were really hard to manage. And, I did what I could. I got it where I could. I tried to source it as best I could. But the problem is that, when it's not legal, people will do what it takes to take care of themselves. And honestly, it was one of the few things that worked.
How far back was this? Let's just for a little bit of a timeline. Are we talking 20 years here? Are we talking 10 years? Are we talking 40 years? What are we talking?
I would say consistent use of cannabis would be probably a solid 10 years, as far as for treating medical stuff. Of course, 16, 17, probably a little bit younger than that. But I used it to escape at first, honestly. I have an addictive personality, and if it's a thing, I can get addicted to it. I struggle with my relationship with cannabis sometimes, but especially now, having access to strains that I can count on and things that I can experiment with, that has really enhanced my ability to cope with my depression, to cope with my medical stuff, to cope with my addiction, actually, because I can be very deliberate about it. I can be very deliberate about the strains I choose and in those moments. Or do I use a tincture, or do I use flower, or do I use both? Do I use the high THC? Do I use high CBD, or both? Some combination of it. So I look at this as, the interesting thing is sometimes when I use a strain, it affects me one way. Sometimes I use a strain, it affects me another way. And I really think I've worked with herbs in the past, and it is very, very similar. There's for lack of a better term, there's an energy to the plant. When you approach an herb or a plant on its own terms, I think that there's a relationship that happens, almost an agreement, okay, I'm willing to see what you have to give me and to work with that. It's so easy to take that pill and not be conscious of it.
Chris, we've heard this before, like Valerie talks about how having consistent product selection and consistent access has made a big difference in your ability to to treat your condition or to use it medically or to use it for whatever really you want, but consistently, not just getting it wherever or buying a bunch at once and then using the best stuff first and being left with, oh, I've got this bag of gummies that, they're okay, but it's all I got.
And hoping you can find something, similar down the road, again, because it works so well,
Sure. And I don't think anybody before you were able to get it here, Valerie, were you somebody who kept a journal of what you used before and then would go back and seek out the same brand and the same strain? Or was that just something I don't know anybody who does that?
Actually, I was one of those people. I did actually do my best to, when I would go, I would try to keep track of at least what worked and what didn't, so that the next time I got product, because honestly, I was going out of state.
Yeah.
And so you never know. If you go, every 6 months or whatever, you never know what they're going to have, and things change. So even though I was trying to pay attention, again, there's that consistent access, right? Like driving 6 hours or 4 hours or 3 hours or, whatever it is. I mean, that's a significant commitment to do. So it's difficult. It becomes a burden, and it becomes like, oh, okay, do I have enough product to last me the rest of this month? Do I need to drive sooner? Do I need to plan this thing? So yeah, being able to actually have that has been enormously helpful. And I have been doing my best to keep a journal now. Some days I'm better at it than others, but I have a general idea. One of the things that I like is, and I tell our clients this too, Tim, is I understand that it's frustrating because we can't count on exactly the product we're going to have every month, whether we're going to have flower, what strains we're going to have, and all of that. So I guess
that's a good point.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because we're more consistent than before, but still we're at the point where we're still not, you still can't go down and buy, you can't go buy the strain you want every day, every time, every day.
Yep. Yeah. And so when I'm talking to our patients, I let them know that can I mention the actual website or not?
Oh yeah, you can mention the website.
Okay. So Leafly has an amazing terpene profiler now.
Cool.
So terpenes and CBD and CBN and all of that. So what I do is I go, if I find something that I like, so like Tim, you and I were talking about the Durban poison and how the Durban poison was kind of helping my whole GI tract. And that was like part of it. And then when I started to mix in some of the CBG hemp flower, where I did that 2-to-1 mix with the Durban poison, that was amazing. So, but I haven't seen Durban poison now for a couple months. So what I do is I go on Leafly and I look up Durban poison, and then I look up similar strains.
That's a good idea.
And then you can go to the dispensaries and you can try to find similar strains.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Okay, so to back up just a little bit, because you mentioned that you work in our clinic and you see patients, and for the listeners, it's really important. And this is part of the reason why we wanted you to come on too, because you're unique amongst patient navigators because you're not 22 and
True.
you have a perspective not only as a patient and an advocate of cannabis, but experience in a way that is different. And just, I feel like the way that you present cannabis to patients is more comforting. Do you feel like that's one of the things that you like to do because you're really good at it? And when you talk about the strains that you're using and the terpenes and things like that, you really you're into this.
Yeah, I am. Actually, honestly, I feel like, that old Remington commercial where the guy's like, I liked the company so much I bought it. When I saw that you had a job opening, that I became about pursuing that, because I love our clinic in that you have a very unique viewpoint. You are all about destigmatization first. And I think that that is absolutely critical. I've seen it in mental health when I worked up at uni for 8 years, and I see that, like, if you destigmatize it, patients actually tell you what their real experience is, and you can actually connect and meet them where they are and help them shift to where they want to be. So for me, education, I love education. I am a freaking cannabis geek. I'm a vaporizer geek. I like get obsessed about it. I like looking into things, you know. So for me, it's honestly, I've had people say, "What are you doing different? Like, you are so different from, you know, a month ago from where you were." Because I was really struggling with the pandemic, and I stepped away from my previous job as a psychic reader, which I had done for almost 15 years, because that really helps me help others. And with the pandemic and with everything, I had to step away from that. I couldn't keep myself as open, but I didn't feel like I was being of service. And for me, that's huge. So the opportunity that you've given me to actually educate people and meet them where they are. And, you know, some people really, they just want, give me the 3 times a day tincture, whatever it is. And that's totally fine. And I tell our clients, our patients that, you know, like, if that's where you want to be, just let us know. And that's where we'll meet you. But if you want to be all into it like me and be a weirdo and all of that, like, we can meet you there too. And so that's what I love about your perspective, Tim, is that the first thing that has to happen is that destigmatization. And that, look, I'm just like you, and I've been where you are, and I'm not going to make you feel stupid if I can absolutely help it. So I think it's actually really an amazing opportunity.
I think that's the key, is the destigmatization. That's what I like about this podcast is, you know, we're just talking about it like it's kind of a normal thing.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about cannabis? And Chris, this is a kind of a question for everybody. We are all, the 3 of us especially, we're also deep in the cannabis culture in Utah and what we do. Do you feel like you've got we have a little bit of a warped view? Sometimes I think I've got a little bit of a warped view because, like, it's all cannabis all the time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I got to back up and say, oh, wow, not everybody is in this world.
Well, especially when you find that one person that still has that warped idea that it's like a gateway drug, that it's going to open up these other doors for harder drugs. It's like, wow, there's still people like that out there. It's like,
yeah,
you know,
where we don't, I don't run into those people all the time or very commonly anymore.
But when you do, it's like, what is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's odd. And they probably look at us maybe and say the same thing. Like, oh my gosh, you've just drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Well, you're just looking for a reason to get high.
Yeah, you're just using it as a reason to get high. It's weird because, like, I don't know, as a patient, you know, a lot of patients don't use it all the time. You know, use it when you need it. Don't use it when you need it. You still need a card. It's not like, you know, I don't have pain all the time, right? So Valerie, let's get back to this use because we talked about your use about the Durban poison and then mixing hemp flower. Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite? Maybe a few quick questions here. What's your favorite dry herb vaporizer?
What are you currently using?
All of them.
Yes.
Do you have a lot of them?
I do, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have. I actually have 2 fireflies, which you just started using a little bit too, Tim, didn't you?
Yeah, the firefly is super cool.
Yeah,
and you are the one who told me that one of the reasons the packs isn't, I don't know, there's a silicone thing in the packs, and so the silicone absorbs the flavor, and then the next round or the next bowl of flour tastes like the old one.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the silicone. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And
No, I
some
didn't know that
people,
before.
it doesn't bother. I mean, I know people in our clinic even who absolutely love the packs. And to be honest, the packs is really, really good for people who want just something fairly simple, fairly easy, and it's really pretty easy to clean. There aren't a whole lot of parts. It's just pretty simple. So, I mean, I think honestly, all vaporizers have a place. Even the crappy, $30, $40 dry herb vaporizers that are going to give you like maybe 2 or 3 bowls and then maybe go out.
If that.
I actually, yeah, and I actually encourage people, especially people who have smoked for a really long time, and like even some of our older folks, like our older hippie kind of people, like that generation, which is not far from me. I'm 52, so I'm not calling anybody out on their age, just saying. I think that once you get a vaporizer in somebody's hand and they can actually experience it and realize that, man, like I've been smoking and it's really harsh. And it's like, it's like when I quit smoking and went to vaping, and then I would be around smokers and I'd be like, oh my God, like I smelled like that all the time. So I think it really is about getting a vaporizer in somebody's hand and letting them experience that. I also think that each vaporizer it has its own quirks. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have somebody that is a little familiar with it, like, I mean, I obsessively watch YouTube reviews and read stuff and all the reviews and right. But a lot of people don't want to do that. So that's why I kind of like what we do in clinic as well, which is that education part, because most people so we have a packet that we give to our patients. And in that packet, there is a couple of things, Tim, that I find incredibly helpful. The first one is that spectrum, that temperature spectrum for all of the cannabinoids.
Like how hot you're burning it. And
Exactly. And at the very top with combustion, there are 3 things that you can access. 3. And there are like 100 different combinations of terpenes and cannabinoids and all of that. So you blow past all that medicine, all of it, and all you get are those 3. It's like 2 cannabinoids and a terpene, right, Tim? I think.
Yes. THC. And then, yep. And I mean, primarily you're getting the THC.
Correct.
That and the plant material in your lungs, which is no good, which we talk about a lot on the podcast, like smoking, how they want to add smoking to the available list of delivery methods. And, the Utah Medical Association is against it. And I agree with you, Valerie. I like the vaping is safer, and you need to experience it. If you've been smoking a long time, you really just need to experience it because it's just different.
Correct.
But I was curious when you were mentioning all the different vaporizers. So you truly believe that they each offer kind of something different. It's helpful to have multiples. Like I've always been the one who's been like, well, if I'm only, using it at home, a vaporizer I use at home, like I use a Volcano. So I'm like, well, I'm at home and that's all I need to use. But you think I might benefit from some of these other ones? Yeah,
I do.
Do you think it burns different or?
I do. I think so. Okay. So there are 2 different, technically 3 different. There's the conduction, there's convection, and then there's hybrid. So conduction is like the packs. If you have a PAX or if you have any kind of conduction vaporizer, you want to grind your herb usually pretty fine and you want to pack it tight. So the reason for that is you want that herb in complete contact with that surface that's going to heat up, because you want that herb to heat up evenly so that you get all of the components, right? So, but in a convection, where it uses warm air circulating through the herb, you actually want to pack it looser and in a bigger, bigger chunks, because that gives it more surface area for the air to rotate over. So the way you pack things are going to be a little different. You're going to stir a convection kind of in the middle. So it's kind of like each individual vaporizer has its own combination of factors that once you get to learn, or once you kind of know. So I usually go, if I really want a lot of flavor, if I want a lot of terpenes, I will usually use a convection. So I'll go with the Firefly.
Do you think most people really know what their vaporizers are, though? Do you think most people?
No way.
I don't even know what a volcano. I mean, what is a volcano? Is that a?
Well, it depends. Do you have the digital one or do you have the manual one?
I have the manual one. I wish I had the digital one.
I know, right? So they both work. I think it's primarily convection, but from my understanding, it is a bit of a hybrid.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a hybrid, but mostly the air passing through it, the convection.
Yes.
That's the design of it is supposed to be like that, right? Like the Firefly, because you're sucking the air through the chamber up into the just a little different than the packs.
Yeah, I like the Firefly because it's so, okay, so let me back up a little. With the Firefly, I was talking to you, Tim, about like how I was actually combusting the herb. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? I don't understand. So it was literally how I was drawing, how I was packing, the fact that I didn't stir sooner. One of the other things that I found is instead of stirring, I kind of turn the Firefly and just kind of tap it, and it kind of stirs up without even having to open up the thing.
Because you don't pack it too tight.
Right. Exactly. Yep. So, but the thing that I love about the Firefly is the fact that it goes right from the oven. It goes across that. It has a glass vapor path, right? So glass doesn't absorb. So it's not going to build up on the glass like it does on the silicone. And so you're always going to have that consistent flavor and that consistent vapor production that goes over that glass. It's never going to be adulterated in that form. So that's one of the things that I like about the Firefly.
Yeah, I think the flavor of the Firefly, now that I've tried it, it's the superior flavor of a portable vaporizer.
Yes.
It's the superior if flavor is a big deal. And small, do you find that you're using like with the packs, it seems like you could pack it and you can use it multiple sessions, whereas you kind of get diminished taste, right? Taste isn't as good the second session, but you've still got flower in there you want to use. So, use it up. Whereas the Firefly is more of a single session, like event, because you don't put as much in there. And I don't know, you tasted it after and it's just disgusting. Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that I like also about the Firefly is that it is on demand too. So it is probably the smallest, from my understanding. I don't know every vaporizer out there, but the smallest convection oven that's on demand. So, with it taking 3 seconds to heat up and it cools down. And even though the case still stays warm, the actual herb isn't still getting combusted, or not combusted, but vaporized.
Wait, it heats up in 3 seconds? It heats up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That so
ridiculous.
To kind of explain that a little bit, a Firefly has 2 buttons on the side. You don't push the buttons, you just connect the buttons. And you're showing us on the screen here, but our listeners can't see it. You connect the 2 by just, your fingers are the connection.
Huh.
In 3 to 5 seconds, it is hot and ready to inhale. When you let go, it goes off. It is either on or it is off.
Yep.
And so people really like it. So unlike the packs where you turn it on, the packs you turn on and it stays on until you turn it off. The Firefly, you turn it on every hit, essentially, and it turns off. Yeah, there's a good conversation about kind of 3 different types of vaporizers. One, all portable. Of course, you have the Volcano, which is the classic desktop vaporizer, which is great if you're gonna use it and you can afford it. And the Firefly, which is, an expensive for a portable, but convection, the PAX, which is conduction and a little bit different. And then your hybrids, which are various prices.
Exactly.
Have you ever used the Da Vinci?
I haven't. I started showing you my Extreme Q. This is an airizer. I'm sorry.
What is
I
that?
would like to speak with this. This is basically a volcano, but for like $169 as opposed to $350.
What's it called?
It's the airizer Extreme Q. It actually has a ceramic. It's ceramic and glass element. Heats up it's convection, so heats air through it, and you can either fill a bag or it has like a hookah tube. So this is what I use at home.
Oh, that's
Okay,
cool.
that's cool.
I couldn't justify $500.
So there really isn't a difference. I mean, that's going to work just as good as a volcano. Wow.
Yeah,
I have to give
exactly. It does bags. It doesn't work quite as well as the volcano with bags.
Okay.
The volcano, I don't know, stores in Bickle, they're ridiculous. They've been around forever, but something, I don't know, the way it's set up or whatever, the bag doesn't get harsh after a while quite as quickly as the bag on the Extreme Q. So It's just a thing. Again, it's just a thing. So, but if you're going to use it at home and that's the only place you're going to use it, and you sit in your chair next to your television, you set it up, you have a hookah. It's basically hookah type setup. You turn the fan on. It even has a little remote control that you can turn the fan on and off. You can turn the temperature up and down. That's the one thing that I like about the airizers. So Airizer is a smaller Canadian company, and all of their devices, except for I think like one, the Air, have temperature control on the unit itself, which means that you don't have to have an app. You don't have to do anything fancy. You literally can change it degree by degree. So by dialing that in, you can dial in the terpenes and the cannabinoids and all of those things that you want specifically degree by degree.
Okay, explain that a little bit, because people don't understand how the experience at 330 degrees, 350 degrees is different than it is at 450 degrees because of this terpene profile and where things are activated. Do you use this in medicating the temperature?
Yes.
What's the difference for you between like a strain? You're telling me that a strain, this is my experience too, a strain at vaped at 350 degrees, totally different experience than vaped at 450 degrees.
Yep, 100%.
What's the difference?
Wow. So I start fairly low, and also I use Celsius, so I don't know what the change is, but I start at like between 150 and 165 Celsius, which is probably what, 320, 350?
Oh, wow. So you go low.
Like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, no, I absolutely go low. And what I do is I hit, because at that really low temperature, you can actually activate like the CBN, because CBN, what Tim is like it's just barely over like 310 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's super low, but like all of the, the two cannabinoids that we focus on largely is the CBD and the THC, but all of those sub cannabinoids have their own experience. So being able to access that at the really low temperatures, you start to really taste like the flavors. So you'll have that kind of diesel-y taste, or you'll have that citrusy taste, or all those terpenes become active at different temperatures, and all of those terpenes have different effects on your system. So for me, that's often the difference in the strains, is the active terpenes, the active cannabinoids, and that is more impactful on my medical use than whether it's a sativa or an indica or a hybrid or whatever. So does that answer?
Yeah, totally. Do you find that lower temperatures are better for daytime use, higher temperatures at night, or vice versa? Or is it just strain by strain?
I would say it's strain by strain, largely. I don't know that I would correlate temperature with time of use, only insofar as if you go higher, you're going to have that more activation of the THC. So the higher you go, the more THC is active. So I guess in that specific thing, I would say probably, yeah, lower temperatures would be better because it wouldn't activate that THC as much, at least in my experience. But like the question that I asked you when we were doing my visit, when I asked you, so have you had the experience of like people with ADHD having paradoxical effects with sativas? And you were like, I don't know. I don't like
Yeah.
I haven't captured that. Like, you're the weirdo. You're the weirdo. I don't have any other weirdos. So, because I find that a couple of the sativas, like Pineapple Express, every time knocks me on my butt and I sleep for a couple hours.
Oh, wow.
And that is supposed to be one of the most energizing strains.
Yeah.
And I've had that with a couple other sativas where I'm just like, so yeah.
Huh. I think that that just proves the point that it's hard to get good. It's hard to get good dosing and delivery guidelines for everybody when it comes to plant-based medicine in general. It really is keep a journal, try it out, figure it out, keep a low dose, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We had a meeting with the Department of Health the other day about dosing and how providers are recommending dosing. And there is so much different opinion in the expert field of Utah. This meeting was with really a handful of people who are really involved in the space, and none of us can figure out how to dose a
Really?
brand new patient. I mean, the pharmacists are like, well, you know, you just kind of got to try it out. And the providers are like, yeah, you kind of just got to try it out. And that's different than other medicine. And it's hard to design a legal system for that. And when every strain is different, every temperature is different, think of all the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And how wonderful and amazing and fabulous is it that this one freaking plant has so many applications, including cancer treatment. There are international studies that show improvement in lung cancer. Inhaling the cannabis, it treats that. So how freaking amazing that this plant does so many things if you treat it with like curiosity and respect and fascination, and decide to even ask that question of, even if that person doesn't want to get involved in any more than just an alternative thing, that opening to say, I want something different than just a mindless medication, like I just want to be able to take it and forget about it. I think it goes back to the fact that we're not being mindful anymore, and we're not being present. And being present with your medical treatment, being present with your medicine, I think makes a difference, even if it's just in your own resilience, in your own experience of that, your own empowerment. I see it with herbs too. People go in wanting that quick fix, and you will never get it with an herb. You just won't. So there's this blend, I think, that is hard to get, where you've got the medical professionals, right? And you've got the people who are a little more whole plant and whole, alternative and that kind of thing. And it's just like, where do you come down on this? And it's like, well, the plant does all that. So you got to come down on all that too. So yeah, totally. I can see where that would be really difficult.
I'm curious, do either of you have any 2021 cannabis predictions that you care to share on this? I figure since this is the first episode of the year, as we, it might be kind of fun to look back at this episode. I don't know. And say, what predictions did we make? I don't know.
That is a good question, Chris.
I guess I should have had you prepared for it, I guess.
What do you think? Do you have any ideas?
What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely think this year is the year that it's going to be decriminalized. I definitely believe that. So that's going to completely open up the marketplace from state to state. That's what I think is going to happen. That's my prediction.
The federal government is going to decriminalize cannabis.
Yeah.
That would be huge in 2021.
I believe it's going to happen this year.
That's amazing. I'm not going to go that far, Chris.
What do you think?
I think we get, I think they're going to have an independent study. I think the federal government is going to create an independent council to study the effects and to give us a report this year. And that's as far as I think we're going to go, is we're going to get a report of how to do it. And then we're going to hear at some point in the year, there's going to be all kinds of news articles about the possibilities, and it's going to increase the amount of talk we have about it. And it's going to increase people's awareness of its benefits. I also, on the negative side, my second prediction is you're going to see a couple of studies come out against the use of cannabis for things like increasing psychosis and anxiety, and some of these things that are going to start the process of narrowing what cannabis is good for and what it might not be good for. And we're going to get a little clearer picture on that, or at least the beginning. Those are my two predictions.
Any thoughts on either of those, Valerie, or any thoughts on other predictions, or do you care to weigh in at all?
Sure. I'm always up for future embarrassment. So I think, so the fact is that this year, the MORE Act was passed in the House, which means that at least in one part of our government, there is the political will to decriminalize, to make it more available for research, to make it more available in general. So I think that if the makeup of the Senate changes a little bit, it is possible, not probable, in my opinion. I agree with you, Tim. I think it's possible that we'll see at least the beginnings of decriminalization this year. So in 2021. So I would say I kind of agree with both of you. To be honest, I do think, Tim, that we are going to see some negative stuff come out. I think it needs to be framed appropriately, though, because, I do think that, especially in mental health, there is some serious benefit in the use of cannabis. I think it's just going to be a lot more precarious to find that point of homeostasis. So I do think that there's going to be money in it. And I think that big pharma and people who want to do the money thing, it's already happening, but I think established companies are going to want to get their hands on it. And I think that those of us that do connect with this as a plant and as plant medicine, we have to fight really, really hard to stop people from breaking out the components and making it into medicine, because it works better as the plant. So I think we're going to have to decide and hold the line. And I think 2021 is really when it's going to start to make that shift. So there you go.
I have a question on, you were talking about, the negative, your prediction was kind of the negative reviews, the negative things of cannabis. What are your thoughts on, let's see if I can word this properly, because I don't personally think cannabis is for everybody. I mean, I think it can react negatively to some people. So it's kind of like, if it reacts negatively to somebody, is that a negative light of cannabis then, or is that just negative of them? It's kind of an interesting way to look at. I don't know if that makes sense at all. I think so often you and I, Tim, we want to glorify cannabis because it's so wonderful, but I think sometimes we have to remember that it isn't wonderful for everybody. Some people can't handle it.
No. So, and I think that that's where I honestly, it's one of the things that I have to constantly remind myself about in this space is we're constantly pushing for more and more access, more and more conditions to be added to the list and things like that. But because we can't research it in the same way we can other things, we cannot find out the good and we cannot find out the bad and get more specific about what's good and what's bad. We all just say, well, nobody's died, so we might as well, so let's just all use it. Let's just give it to everybody. And I agree with you, Chris. I think this year, because we're starting to see more specific research, we'll now be able to start to see a narrowing of that, of who may benefit, who may not benefit. I think that might be one of the good ways to get medical providers and the medical establishment on board, is if you can say, okay, look, we all agree, even in the cannabis field, we're going to agree, this is who might not benefit. Then the medical providers will be like, okay, see, now we'll get on board.
I agree. Honestly, I think one of the things that I hear just from my docs and from the people that I know is, well, we don't have enough data. Well, we don't have enough data. Well, we don't have enough data. Oh, okay, I get that. So how do we get more data without it being decriminalized, without us being able to have more research studies? And the other thing about research studies is it depends on the question you ask too. Like, what are you trying to capture? If you go in trying to capture the positive, you're going to capture the positive. If you go in trying to capture the negative, you're going to capture the negative. So I think that it's super important to put whatever data that we do get into context and not just say, oh, well, yes, it causes psychosis, or yes, it, causes anxiety, or whatever that is. And I think that's one of the things, Tim, that I like about your viewpoint, honestly, is even though you are pushing, one of the things that you're very clear about is we're here to help the patient. And if I hear something that I'm concerned about, I'm going to tell you, or I'm going to tell the provider. And then the provider is going to delve into that. So I think that that's one of the things that's really good about having cannabis providers, QMPs in specific, is that that's all you do. That's all you do. And if we can capture the data in some way, even if it's just the subjective data, and get that to the docs, that right there is going to be a huge key.
I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is thank you, Valerie.
You're welcome.
There's been a lot of interesting stuff discussed on this episode. I think it's been very informative. I learned a lot. Shoot, I want to go out and get some more vaporizers now. Now I feel like I'm missing out. I need to add a couple more to my collection.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad we had the conversation about some specifics about vaporizing, because I think that we haven't had that talk on the podcast yet, Chris. And this should be helpful, hopefully, for a lot of people who are curious. Curiosity. Yep, we'll destigmatize vaporizing cannabis right here,
right
tonight.
Now.
That's right.
Yeah.
What's going on in Utah news? Anything that we need to discuss on this episode, Tim, that patients need to be aware of or anything?
So as of the date of the release of this podcast, your letter is no longer valid.
Yeah, this will be January 1st, this episode.
Yep. Your letter is no longer valid. If you do not have a medical card in Utah, you are using cannabis illegally today. And I'm sorry to say that, but it is true. And so That's the biggest, I think that, and then you have to have purchased by statute. You have to have purchased your cannabis in Utah in order for it to be legal, whether everybody is going to follow that or not. That's just the law. How they're going to prove you bought it here, we don't quite know. But those are two huge changes.
I would imagine the packaging, they need all those stickers and receipts and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the two big announcements that I see. The legislative session is going to start, and then they're going to discuss a few tweaks to the law there. But nothing is set in stone yet.
I wanted to mention, there's finally ounces. You can buy an ounce at, or not Wholesome, but at Beehive. Beehive has ounces. So that's very good to know. They have a sativa and they have an indica blend, or not a blend, but, two different
hybrid
strains available. Yeah, I guess, and pay attention. I think even Sugar House Select is going to be dropping some flower off soon here. Keep an eye on Instagram. That's why I try to tell people, watch on Instagram, get their text messages, whatever way to connect. So you can keep an eye when flowers dropping at all these places, because that stuff is flying off the shelves.
Yeah. And then I guess as a potential teaser, we probably will have a big announcement in the next couple of weeks. UtahMarijuana.org, Utah Therapeutic Health Center, potentially going to Utah County. So that's in the works.
There you go, Tim. Do we have any other questions for Valerie, or should we let her get going, or anything else you guys wanted to talk about on this episode?
Not me.
I'm good.
Valerie, I'll see you soon.
Oh, no. That's terrifying.
Can listeners, do you have an Instagram or anything, Valerie, that people can connect with you? Or is there in case people wanted to reach out and say hello or thanks for, something you said. I don't know. Do you have an email address, or I don't know?
Yeah. You can even send it to Valerie at utthc.com.
Awesome.
Valerie at utthc.com. There you go.
Absolutely. Reach out to me.
And Tim, how can listeners connect with you or find out more about what you have going on?
Well, for us, Utah in the Weeds is found at utahmarijuana.org. We've got all the podcast episodes there and summaries of them all. We're definitely pretty much caught up now with all the episodes. And that's a great place to connect with me. See the articles that we write and connect. If you have questions about your letter converting to a card this year and getting legal again, definitely reach out to us there. You can chat with us online, but utahmarijuana.org. How about you, Chris? How about your other podcast?
My other podcast, I Am Salt Lake Podcast, iamsaltlake.com. Go give that one a listen. It's a fun podcast. That's actually how I met Tim. I probably say that on every episode and everybody's getting sick of hearing that, but it's true. I'm having so much fun on that, meeting all these people in Utah, not only people in the cannabis game, but we're talking to food truck owners, restaurant owners, bartenders, anybody, right? And so it's been neat to, see the different sides of Utah, different sides of Salt Lake City. By doing that. But I also want to mention, if anybody is interested in coming on the show, to go to utahmarijuana.org. And, like you were even mentioning, I think on one of the episodes, Tim, is even hit up the chat, right? Like they can go to the chat and hit somebody up and say, hey, I'm a patient or I'm a cultivator or whatever. And I want to come on the podcast, and we would probably let you come on, right?
Absolutely.
One more thing I want to mention. We have a voicemail line. We haven't gotten any voicemails yet. It'd be cool if we got some. We're thinking of just kind of starting this. If anybody has questions like for Tim or myself, or questions about cannabis in Utah or topic ideas, whatever, we might play the voicemail on the podcast. And that number is 385-215-9557. So, on that note, make sure to subscribe in whatever podcast app you're listening to this in. Go check out utahmarijuana.org and iamsaltlake.com. Thank you again, Valerie. And as Tim likes to say,
stay safe out there, guys.